Ronn Ford is the chairman and CEO of Ronn Motor Group. He has 50 years in the automotive industry, half of that in the world of luxury vehicles. He's designed for Chrysler, Porsche, Zonda, and what we're going to hear about today. Please welcome Ronn Ford.
Hello, everybody. My name is Ronn Ford. I am the founder and CEO. And if you just listen to what Elio Motors addressed and stuff, then I don't really have to say anything. Because they were the leaders, and they've done a fantastic job in what they've done. And I can agree with them. This Reg A plus thing has been one of the most challenging things that we've ever worked with, for sure. I know how to build automobiles. Been doing it for 50 years. I know how to build technology. We have some of the most extensive technology in our company. We just wrap it up in a pretty face, which is, our cool cars. We do plan to build smaller vehicles and much more cost-efficient vehicles. Maybe not an Elio Motors car, but something along those lines. We did choose Regulation A plus as a method different than what they did, maybe diametrically opposed, would you say, Nicole? Very much so. We were a company that had gone out in 2008 to market. The first time we debuted our first car, which was a hydrogen-assisted vehicle in 2008. And the reason we did that is because I was trying to prove a point back in 2008 that you could build a really cool car that didn't look like a square box or a Prius or something like that, and it would actually get good fuel mileage. We were trying to do that back in 2008. And I was a little not as refined as I am today, maybe. And I was kind of angry at the big automakers because they said they couldn't do that. So we built our Scorpion. That's the car you saw up there. That car at that time had emissions that were about 75% of what you would find on a fully electric vehicle. It had hydrogen assist that we developed and built ourselves. It also got 40 plus miles per gallon, which is pretty good for a car that has 700 horsepower. That wasn't exactly all due to the hydrogen, but that was a big help. Hydrogen was a big help for that, but it did clean up the emissions. But we designed the car from the ground up to get fuel mileage. Ultra lightweight, low rolling resistance, aerodynamic, all the things that you even heard, the Elio guys talk about on their car. Same design, same principles involved. So you can scale up from what they've got to what we've got and accomplish those goals if you set out with a plan ahead of time. So that's how that car developed. The only problem we had, and I hate to use the word problem, was in 2008. We debuted our car the day before Mr. Obama got elected, and we were on the hydrogen side. He was very much on the electric side. So Elon Musk and myself, we built our cars nearly at the same place, the same time out in California, and put our cars together. He was a battery guy. He got the big money, and we didn't. So we had to kind of start over and regroup. We tried to bring the car to market. You know how difficult that is. It's like the most brutal thing on the planet. Very costly, capital intensive, and you got to have a pretty good market. We are kind of well known around the world. We have a really good face around the planet, but we just couldn't sustain it in 2008, 9, and 10. So we wrapped the car up, put it up, kept developing our hydrogen technologies, our sensor technologies, our, oh gosh, what all we have. Jim, we got so many technologies. I can't even count them all. We have autonomous driving stuff that we have inside the car. We developed that in our relationships for a long, long time. 2016, I brought the car back out, debuted at Barrett-Jackson, just to kind of see, kind of tested the market again. I got invited to go out, and I said, well, let's just see, how this old car will look. We brought it out. They set us next to a McLaren. We had something like 2,000 interviews in 10 days. The McLaren got like 10. So I knew we were on to something then. I used the Barrett-Jackson experience in 2016 as a focus group. So every day I would use it as a method to find out. I would use different scenarios. It's going to be $1 million car, and we're going to sell 20 of them. It's going to be a $20,000 car, and we're going to sell 1 million of them. It didn't really matter what I threw out to people. They all sort of liked the idea. So I knew that the timing was right, the market was right, and we were ready to come back to market. It was actually better thanks to Elon. And we decided to build an all-electric version, which is going to be our new car coming out called the Phoenix, which will be our new car. And that was what I started to do in 2017. We came back out again. We chose Reg A plus. It was kind of new. Elio had really knocked a home run with it. It was we chose it not so much to raise money. That wasn't really our game plan at the time. We felt like if we raised some money with it, that would be okay. But we really wanted it as a marketing tool to be able to use social media and make the people aware, because we've been hidden for 4 or 5 years. They didn't know we existed. We were sort of, on the internet, I was known as the guy who was just vaporware. So we, which is a good thing to have in the hot rod market. It kind of builds up your prestige. You got some secret kind of hot rod car you're building. But it was time to come back to market. So we chose the Reg A for that reason. It proved to be, I want to make sure that everybody understands it in here. It's not a get quick rich kind of a scheme. You can't just go file, be done in 30 days and go to market and think you're going to make millions of dollars. It's labor intensive, it's marketing intensive, it's legal intensive, and even with all those things, you may not raise $10. I mean, it just could happen. We know guys who've done that, unfortunately. It took us about, 4 or 5 months to go through the legal process. We had a lot of experience. We had really experienced guys who helped us with that. The hardest part, I guess, was the audits. I heard somebody earlier today talk about the audit process. I've learned, I hope there's no auditors in here because I hate you. And I couldn't sleep at night. They're so tough. I thought we only had like 25 transactions, but it still took 4 or 5 months to get through that. It was awful. And I said, who keeps records like that? Nobody does that, but apparently somebody does. I'm just not that guy. So we got through that. The SEC was wonderful. We only had 1 round of questions. We had about 16 questions first round. We were able to answer those really quickly, and we were qualified very shortly after the audit was finished. So that part was great. That was last year. That was in April, I think, of last year. We got a qualified Tier 2 $50 million Reg A. However, we didn't go to market with it right then. We just sat on it. And the reason for that, because we had a much bigger plan. We used it to go start marketing, using social media, letting people know we had it available. We made a little bit of money during that time, but that wasn't our focus, because at that time we really had a long-term plan of not really going to the OTC. We had been on the OTC several years ago. It's a hard place to be, and we knew that we kind of wanted. I'm older. I'm 66. I don't know how you are, Paul, but I don't want to do this again, so I didn't want to have to go through the OTC, QX and stuff. I would if I had to, but if we could make the step up to a senior exchange, that's really was my goal. So we went to New York, and we put together a team. It took me several months to put together a team of broker-dealers, analysts, attorneys. We had to go meet the guys on the New York Stock Exchange. We had to hang out with the NASDAQ guys. And it took about 4 months of 100-hour weeks in New York City, which is very, very expensive to do that, to convince them and tell them a story time and time and time again, why we could make it to market, what our plan was, why we're using Reg A plus, and what our long-term goal was, which is actually to list on either the NASDAQ or the New York Stock Exchange. And a little different than our friends over here is that we had bigger plans. So to market to accredited and unaccredited investors, particularly unaccredited, is kind of my passion. I love that. I was raised pretty poor, I guess. I never had an opportunity to invest in big IPOs or other big companies and stuff. So the idea that anybody could get in there and invest was an important factor of why we chose that. However, accredited investors are a whole different story. They're not the kind of guys, we didn't find it to be true in our case, that would just go out there and click on a button and invest $1,000 or $500 or $5,000. The guys that we had been talking to in our space were more sophisticated, and they wanted to be, they wanted private placement memorandums, and they wanted lots of due diligence, and they wanted all this history, and they wanted a long-term strategy other than just building one car. That was our experience from the space that we were in. And we did put that stuff together before we even started, because we knew we needed a long-term game plan based on that. And our game plan was that we were going to move from the Reg A plus, get our broker-dealers in place, and I bought out a company in Sweden to buy a factory that's producing electric buses today. We used rather than try to create a factory from scratch, as which most automakers did. Elio did the right thing. But you see a lot of the other car companies out there, they come out, they get a really pretty picture, and they say, invest in us, and then they say, oh, by the way, we need a lot of money to build a factory from zero. So we just leveraged our relationships. We have an opportunity to buy a factory in Sweden that's already revenue positive. And with that, right after we closed on our Reg A Plus, we were able to close a joint venture with a Chinese company, one of the largest Chinese automakers. Took me 8 years to get that. I laugh a lot, and I tell this to all of my team. I hear all these car makers say, hey, we're going to build a new car, we're going to make $1 billion, we're going to go to China and sell thousands of them. No, you're not. No, you're not. It takes in China, it's about an 8-year process to get an agreement. You have to go meet them, you have to hang out with them, you have to drink a lot of beer. Sorry about that, but it's true. You have to eat a lot of food, you have to have them come back, and they got to trust you, and it takes years and years and years. And I had about an 8-year relationship with Brilliance Automotive on several different occasions. They had looked at some of my hydrogen technology in the past. They had one time offered me a job of taking their partners with BMW. They wanted us to do some AMG work on their BMWs and create a whole new division. There's a lot of things. So we had even in the midst of all that, still took 8 years to get an agreement in place. Very difficult challenge. So that's one of the things. So when you have a company that's in the US, and then you're in Sweden, and then you're in China, that becomes a lot more attractive to people that we were looking at on the bigger raise to build a bigger car company like, I won't say like Tesla, we're not as interested in being as big as Tesla, but to be a boutique car maker in the automotive, bus, electric truck space. It just takes a while to put all those pieces together and get them all in line before you actually go to market and you get your broker dealers. Your broker dealers will go, yeah, we love your story, when are you going to have all these pieces in place? As soon as you have all these pieces in place, then we'll pick up this Reg A, and then we'll use that to walk us into the NASDAQ. That's what they told us months ago and months ago. So it just takes a while. What are some of the other difficulties we had, just to kind of talk about that? We were set to go to market, to list on NASDAQ about November of last year. We'd worked hard. We put all the pieces together. We had an agreement to purchase the factory, which is what we needed. We met all the qualifications, and we were ready to go, and we were set. NASDAQ had convinced me that we should go with them. About that time, we had one of our big seed round investors, and I asked our team there if it was all right if we talked about this. I guess everybody should know this. I want you to know there are difficulties. So we had walked it all the way down to where we were within 2 months of being able to begin the listing process for the NASDAQ, and our lead seed investor, $6 million investor, went sideways. Totally unexpected. And it's not so bad that it happened, but they led us on for some time before they just really came out and said, well, we're not going to go that way. We never really meant to go that way. And that left us kind of struggling really quickly because $6 million is a lot of money. I don't care who you are, particularly on a seed round, because we were looking past the seed round because that money was going to buy the factory, and we already had an agreement. So I went to Sweden. We signed the agreements based on that contract. And when it went sideways, we were already working on the $50 million Reg A raise and a $50 million IPO on NASDAQ. So to have to stop all of that effort and circle back around and gather up that $6 million was a very challenging thing for us. It was I won't say crippling, but dang, it hurt. I mean, it really, really hurt. And, fortunately, we had a great team during that time. We got Jim. He's sitting right there. He's our CTO, long-time software designer. Nicole has been helping us on the marketing side. We went through several marketing teams to kind of figure out, as we were working with this Reg A Plus, we were using that as sort of a focus groups and things like that. And Nicole helped us with the branding because we have a long-term strategy with our branding, which is more of a global mindset, where we're not just a cool car maker, but we have, some SUVs maybe, and we can build supercars, but we have the old boring stuff, which are buses and trucks, which most investors like that because it's money-making revenue. The cars are cool, they're flashy, everybody's attracted to them, but you got to have some legs underneath your stool long term, particularly if you're using a Reg A plus. I've noticed that as most of the Reg A companies that have tried to go public, or actually have gone public outside of you, I suspect, have had real difficulties once they list. They list, they have a run-up, and then they sort of taper off and down because they don't have any marketing or legs underneath their company beyond that. And I don't know if that's from inexperience or they're just trying to learn, but if you don't have that, if you've only got one deal and you give it your big shot and you get listed on the NASDAQ or the New York Stock Exchange and you don't have a game plan beyond that to sustain those revenues and stuff, you're not going to go anywhere from the experience that we've seen. Very, very challenging. So that's sort of, where we are today. I've got to say this, we're very close. We're still in the capital raise. Our broker dealers are on board. We just restructured all of our materials. I don't know. What version are we on, Nego? Yeah, we're on the final version number 50. The analyst, the hardest, maybe the second hardest thing next to the audits was valuations. I don't know, have anybody in here had trouble with valuations before? Yeah, they cripple you. They go this, and they always want the valuation to be less and less and less. And then they want me to go back and they go, well, how could it be less and less and less? I mean, look, we're in this hockey stick marketplace, right? This disruptive technology. Look at Tesla. So there's a lot of room between where we are and where Tesla is, but they don't really care about that. They still go back. I don't care how cool Reg A is. They still go back to the standards, and they want to know, give me your valuations. What are your revenues going to be? And all those things. And then, yeah, we're happy to do the Reg A and sell it for you, but let's go back to basics. So don't let anybody that you're talking to or counseling with tell you any different. It still goes back to basics. And Jim, my friend over here, and actually executive VP on top of everything, he pounds that into my head every day. You got to stick to the basics. It's block and tackle. That's the word he uses all the time. You've got to go back to your basics, and if you don't have a good ground game that you can sustain long term, you're gonna make a flash, and then you're gonna go under. And then you got a bunch of unhappy investors. They're going to be calling you on the phone all day, every day. So I can give that as a line and a warning to anybody in this room. So I guess that's all I have to say about that. I thank you all for listening to me.